Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sanhedrin. We're up to the final Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Yud Aleph, Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elui Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai, Veliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Chana bad Miriam, Sason ben Raya, and Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen. And Avdil ben Chaim lechaim v'derefua shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa betor shah Chulei Israel and the Chlama Mera Binyamin Or Tzion Chai ben Dvorah. This Mishnah deals with the last four in the list of sins punishable by strangling. Hamidnabeh b'shem avodah zara, someone who says a prophecy in the name of an idol. Ve'omer kach amra avodah zara, meaning he says so said a certain idol. Afilu kiven et halacha, he is executed even if he claimed that the idol told him a law of the Torah and he stated the law correctly. For example, he said to treat as tameh something that is indeed tameh, or to treat as tahor something that is indeed tahor. The next sin punishable by strangling is adultery. However, we have learned that adultery with a nara who is betrothed, meaning she has performed erusin, but not nisuin, is punishable not by strangling, but by stoning. That was in chapter 7, Mishnah 1, 4, and 9. Therefore, in the case of a nara, the punishment depends on when the adultery was committed. Adultery before nisuin is punished by stoning, but adultery after nisuin is punished by strangling. The Mishnah teaches that there is an exception to the rule. Habal eshet ish, someone who cohabits with a married woman, kevan shenichnesa l'rshut habal nisuin, once she enters the husband's domain for the purpose of performing nisuin, afal pi shor nivala, even though she has not yet cohabited with him, if another man cohabits with her, for example, her husband or his messenger came to bring her to his house to perform nisuin, and she committed adultery during the journey, this adulterer is put to death by strangling, even though nisuin has not yet taken place. The punishment is strangling, not stoning. The last two sins listed in Mishnah 1, V'zomemeh bat Kohen, zomemin, witnesses who testified falsely that the married daughter of a Kohen committed adultery, are punished with strangling. Uboalah, and a man who cohabited with the married daughter of a Kohen is punished with strangling. The Mishnah notes that the punishment in each of these cases is an exception to a general rule. Shekol hazomemin makdimin leotah mitah. In all other cases of zomemin, witnesses who falsely accuse someone of a sin punishable by execution, they go ahead to receive the same type of execution that the accused person would have received. The Torah decrees that zomemin witnesses are punished with the same penalty that would have been received by the person they falsely accused. This is in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 19. For example, if they falsely accuse someone of stealing 100 zuz, they must pay 100 zuz. If they falsely accuse someone of murder, for which the penalty is execution by beheading, they are put to death by beheading. When the Mishnah says they go ahead to receive the same type of execution, it means that they cannot hope to be put to death in any other way. Rather, they are executed in the same way as the person they falsely accused would have been executed. Chutz mizomemeh bat Kohen, except for zomemin witnesses who testified that the daughter of a Kohen committed adultery. If the woman were in fact guilty, she would be put to death by burning, but the zomemin witnesses who falsely accused her are put to death by strangling. Although the daughter of a Kohen who committed adultery is executed by burning, the man with whom she sinned is executed by strangling, as the Mishnah teaches next. The Torah teaches that the zomemin witnesses receive the same punishment as the man would have received, not the woman. Uboalah, and a man who cohabits with the married daughter of a Kohen is also an exception to a rule. Usually, if a man and woman commit adultery, they both receive the same punishment, but in this case, the man is put to death by strangling, the usual punishment for adultery, while the woman is put to death by stoning. And that is then of Masechet Sanhedrin, Hadrachalan v'Hadran alach Masechet Sanhedrin. We continue now with the new Masechet, Mishnah Masechet Makkot. Masechet Makkot continues the subject that was begun in Tractate Sanhedrin, judgment and punishment of criminal matters by the courts. And in fact, the Rambam in his commentary writes that in some old editions of the Mishnah, the 3 chapters of Masechet Makkot appear as a continuation of Masechet Sanhedrin. The Masechet consists of 3 chapters, each of which discusses a separate topic. The first chapter discusses the laws of false witnesses, specifically Zommin witnesses, a particular type of false witnesses discussed in the Torah. The second chapter discusses the punishment of exile that is imposed upon a person who kills someone inadvertently. The third chapter discusses the punishment of Makkot, lashes, that is given by the court for violation of most of the Torah's prohibitions. We begin with the first parak, just as an introduction. The first chapter deals primarily with a specific type of false witnesses known as Zommin witnesses. The Torah teaches that 2 witnesses are believed for all legal matters. This is in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 15. If 2 witnesses say one thing and another 2 witnesses say another thing, both groups have the same credibility and neither is believed over the other. The case is simply dismissed. And it does not matter how many witnesses are in each group. The Torah states that 2 witnesses are believed, and therefore a group of 2 witnesses has the same credibility as a group of 3 or even 100 witnesses. However, there is a case where the latter witnesses are believed over the earlier ones. This is where the second witnesses say to the first ones, you could not possibly have seen what you claim to have witnessed because you were with us at that time in a different place. For example, if 2 witnesses testify that Reuven killed Shimon in Jerusalem on Sunday, they are believed. If another 2 witnesses testify that Reuven did not kill Shimon, neither pair of witnesses is believed over the other and the case is dismissed. However, if the second pair of witnesses say the first pair of witnesses could not have seen Reuven kill Shimon in Jerusalem on Sunday because they were with us in Hebron on Sunday, the second witnesses are believed and the testimony of the first witnesses is disqualified. It does not matter how many witnesses are in each group as long as there are at least 2. The Gemara in page 5a derives from a verse in the Torah in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 18, that in such a case, and only in such a case, the second witnesses are believed over the first. The process of discrediting witnesses is known as hazama, and the disqualified witnesses are known as edim zommin, literally plotting witnesses. The Torah discusses their punishment. Zommin witnesses are not simply disqualified, they are punished as well. The Torah in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 19 says, you shall do to a zomem witness as he planned to do to his brother, meaning Zommin witnesses are given whatever punishment they had intended to cause to the defendant with their testimony. For example, if they had testified that a person committed a murder and is therefore liable to a death penalty, they are given the death penalty. If they had testified that someone owes a sum of money, they must pay him that amount of money. This punishment is known as hazama punishment. In several cases where they cannot be given the punishment they tried to cause the defendant, they are given malkut lashes instead, like we will see in the Mishnah. We begin with chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Again, most of this chapter deals with the laws of Zommin witnesses. And just to recap, if witnesses testify that they saw an event take place in a certain place at a certain time, and a second pair of witnesses then testify that they saw the first witnesses in a different place at that time, we believe the second witnesses and the first witnesses' testimony is disqualified. The disqualified witnesses are called edim zommin. And again, the Torah states in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 19, you shall do to a zomem witness as he planned to do to his brother. This teaches that zommin witnesses are given whatever punishment they had intended to cause the defendant with their testimony. For example, if they testified that a person committed a murder and is liable to a death penalty, they are given the death penalty. If they testify that someone owes a sum of money, they must pay that amount of money. But in certain cases, though, the zommin witnesses cannot be punished with what they wanted to do to the defendant. And this is the topic of the Mishnah. How are these witnesses punished in such cases? Ketzad edim na'asim zommin. How are witnesses punished for being zommin if they cannot be given the punishment they tried to inflict on the defendant? The Mishnah gives an example of such a case and states how the witnesses are punished. Me'idin anu beish ploni shu ben grusha u ben chalutza. Witnesses said, we testify that so-and-so, who is assumed to be a Kohen, is the son of a divorced woman, or the son of a chalutza, a woman who performed chalitza. Now the Torah forbids a Kohen to marry a divorced woman. This is in the book of Vayikra, chapter 21, verse 7. A child born from such a union is disqualified from being a Kohen, even though his father is a Kohen. In our case, witnesses testify that the mother of a particular Kohen had been divorced from a previous marriage before she married his father, who is a Kohen, and her son is therefore disqualified from being a Kohen. Or they say he is the son of a chalutza. When a married man dies without children and he has one or more brothers, the widow must marry one of the brothers. This marriage is known as Ibum. She can be released from this obligation by performing the ceremony of Chalitza, removal of the shoe. This is in the book of Dvarim, chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. A Kohen may not marry a woman who performed Chalitza, as it says in Kiddushin, page 78a. If he marries such a woman, the child is disqualified from being a Kohen. In our case, witnesses testified that this Kohen's mother performed Chalitza before marrying his father, and her son is therefore disqualified from being a Kohen. The Mishnah says, right, so the witnesses said, we testify that so-and-so, who is assumed to be a Kohen, is the son of a divorced woman, or the son of a Chalutza, and he is therefore not a qualified Kohen. If the witnesses are found to be Zomim, for example, they testified that they saw the Kohen's mother get divorced and perform Chalitza in a certain city on a specific day. Other witnesses testified that they saw the first witnesses in a different city on that day. We do not say that each Zomem witness should be punished with what he tried to cause to the defendant, and therefore he should be considered like the son of a divorced woman or the son of a Chalutza, meaning he should be disqualified from being a Kohen instead of the defendant. Meaning, even if the Zomim witnesses are Kohanim, they are not punished by becoming disqualified Kohanim. If they are not Kohanim, they obviously cannot become disqualified Kohanim. This is because such a punishment would extend to their children. If we disqualify these witnesses from being Kohanim, their children will also be disqualified Kohanim, because the children of a disqualified Kohen is also disqualified from being a Kohen. And Zomim witnesses may not be punished in a way that extends to their children. This is derived from a verse in the Torah, from the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 19, as the Gemara says in Makkot, page 2a. Rather, each Zomem witness receives 40 lashes, Malkut, which is the punishment given to Zomim witnesses who cannot be given the punishment they tried to cause to the defendant. This is derived from a verse in the Torah, in Dvarim, chapter 25, verses 1 and 2. Now, the Mishnah commonly refers to Malkut as 40 lashes, because this is how the Torah describes it in Dvarim, chapter 25, verse 3. However, the actual number of lashes given is 39 and not 40, as the commentaries explain to us. Now, the Mishnah gives another case where Zomim witnesses cannot be punished with what they wanted to do to the defendant. This case involves the law of exile. If someone kills another person inadvertently, he must go into exile in one of the several cities of refuge. The Mishnah discusses witnesses who falsely claim that someone is required to go into exile. Witnesses said, we testify that so-and-so killed someone inadvertently and therefore must go into exile to a city of refuge. If they are found to be Zomim, meaning they testify that they saw the defendant kill someone inadvertently, it was clear from the circumstances that murder was inadvertent in a certain place at a certain time. Other witnesses then testify that they saw the first pair of witnesses in a different place at that time. We do not say that they should be punished with what they tried to do to the defendant, and accordingly, each Zomem witness should go into exile instead of the defendant, because only a person who actually killed someone inadvertently can be punished with exile. This is derived from a verse in the Torah in Dvarim, chapter 19, verse 5, as the Gemara explains on page 2b in Masechet Makkot. Rather, since they cannot be given the punishment they wanted to cause the defendant, each Zomem witness receives 40 lashes. Now, usually, when Zomim witnesses try to obligate a person to pay a sum of money, they must pay that sum. The Mishnah gives cases where Zomim do not have to pay the full amount that they tried to make the defendant pay. The first case involves witnesses who try to obligate a man to pay his wife for Ktubah, the money that a husband or his estate must pay his wife if he divorces her or dies before her. Witnesses said, we testify that so-and-so divorced his wife. It is known that the husband did not pay his wife's Ktubah. Since he must pay her the Ktubah when he divorces her, according to this testimony, he is now obligated to pay her the Ktubah. The witnesses were then found to be Zomimin, and therefore must pay the amount of money they intended the defendant, the husband, to lose. Now, they testified that they saw this man divorce his wife at a specific time and place. Other witnesses testify that these witnesses were in a different place at that time. Therefore, their testimony that this man had divorced his wife is proven false, and he does not owe her the Ktubah. Although they tried to make the husband pay the Ktubah, that might not have been the actual loss. Because either today or tomorrow he might eventually have to pay his wife's ketubah anyway if he dies or actually divorces her. On the other hand, if the wife will die before the husband, he will never have to pay the ketubah, and in that case, the testimony of the Zomin witnesses would have caused him to lose the full value of the ketubah. So the Mishnah says, how then do we calculate the loss that the Zomin tried to cause the husband? The Mishnah explains how to determine the amount that the Zomin must pay. We assess how much a person would be willing to pay this woman to buy the rights to her ketubah, so that if she is widowed or divorced, the buyer will collect the ketubah instead of her. But if she dies before her husband will inherit her and be exempt from paying the ketubah, and the buyer will not get anything. A woman might choose to sell her right to the ketubah to a spectator who will pay her a smaller amount of cash now for the chance to get the larger amount of the ketubah in the future. The amount that a spectator will pay for this chance will be different in every case. For example, if the husband is sick and likely to die, a spectator will pay more than if the husband is healthy, although it will still be less than the amount of the actual ketubah, as the Rambam explains in Ilchot Edut chapter 21, Halacha 1. This sum is the amount that the ketubah is worth right now. Therefore, this is the amount that the Zomin tried to make the husband lose, and this is what they must pay. Another case in which Zomin witnesses pay less than the amount they tried to make the defendant pay. Witnesses said, we testified that so-and-so owes his friend 1,000 zuz, and it was stipulated they must pay that money within 30 days. But the defendant says, I admit that I owe the money, but the stipulation was that I pay within 10 years, not 30 days. The witnesses were then found to be zomimin and must therefore pay the amount they tried to make the defendant lose. Although they tried to make the defendant pay 1,000 zuz, he would not have lost that amount since he admits that he owes it. He simply would have to repay that debt, the debt earlier. The value of this loss is calculated as follows. Omdin kam adam rotzeh, we assess how much a person would pay. V'yu biyado 1,000 zuz, if he has a loan of 1,000 zuz. Ben notnan mikan vat 30 yom, and instead of having to repay within 30 days, Ben notnan mikan vat 10 shanim, he can extend the loan and repay within 10 years. This is the value of the loss that the Zomin tried to cause to the defendant, and this is the amount that they pay. By testifying that the defendant had to repay the money in 30 days rather than in 10 years, the Zomin tried to cause him to lose the right to use that money for the extra time. The value of this loss is the amount that a person would pay to extend the loan from 30 days to 10 years. Now, in truth, a borrower is forbidden to pay a lender to extend his loan because doing so is considered a form of interest, which is prohibited by the Torah. The Mishnah simply means that we evaluate how much a person would be willing to pay for this privilege if he were permitted to do so. And that is an abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.